Good afternoon, and welcome to this afternoon's NAESP Webinar Wednesday, The 1 Minute Miracle, Change Your Whole Life in 60 Seconds or Less. This time, I would like to introduce NAESP's Associate Executive Director of Professional Learning.
Good afternoon, everyone, and happy Veterans Day. We're really excited to have Sarah Palmer with us today. Sarah is the CEO and founder of Sarah Palmer Speaks. I was talking to her before the broadcast and I said, I don't think we can ever get too much good information and advice on health and wellness. So I've really been looking forward to the presentation today, Sarah. I see that you've got information on how we can follow you on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. So that's great. And I'm going to turn the presentation over to you.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Gracie, and thank you as well, Danielle. Thank you to everybody who's out here for, depending on where you are in the country, either a rainy or sunny or cloudy Veterans Day. So excited to be here because we have some good stuff to talk about today. I wanted to say that, again, my name is Sarah Palmer. I'm the Permission to Choose speaker, trainer, and coach, and I work with all sorts of audiences, but especially high achieving women who are kind of looking around going, okay, I did all the things I was supposed to, now what? I'm not done, this doesn't feel right. So with my own personal experience and the folks that I've worked with, we've developed some pretty amazing programs and products and trainings, and I'm here to present my absolute favorite to you today, because as administrators, you definitely feel the crunch from 92 different angles, 93 this year because of the pandemic. And there's ways that you can feel more at home in your own skin. And that's what I'm here for today. So I'm going to show you today how to improve your communication at work, your relationships at home, and the thoughts racing through your head at 4 a.m. And for some of you, you're waking up at 4 a.m. and for some of you, the thoughts woke you up at 4 a.m. Neither of those are great. And we're gonna do that all in 60 seconds a day or less. During our chat, I wanna make sure that you know you can put questions in the chat, and Danielle is going to be checking in with me every so often and letting me know some of the questions that you have so we can answer them. There is nothing worse than sitting through fantastic webinar or a training and going, but what about, and never finding out. So I want to make sure that you are reaching out to Danielle and asking, hey, what about this? Because she's going to share those with me, and we're going to get as many as possible answered now. And for those of you that are watching the recording another time, I have a feeling that they're going to be asking some pretty good questions today, and we're going to be getting along quite well. So I wanted to kind of hit this important point. Sarah, do you really get our day today? So I'm speaking to a group of elementary and some intermediate school principals, and you have a job that is amazing and complex, and it's really easy for people to kind of waltz in and say, oh, well, here's how you fix this, that, or the other, but they don't know what it's like on the day-to-day. So I wanted to let you know I am an 11-year veteran teacher in 5th and 6th grade in 4 different school districts. And I have been also working in a high school situation for the past 6+ years. And in that time, I've had the absolute pleasure to work with 12 principals and vice principals. For some of you, you've been in your positions for quite a while. And for some of you, you might be taking over for somebody now. And for some of you, it's your very first year. And I'm so glad that you're all here. I don't pretend to know every single thing that you did in a day, but just from where I was in the classroom and as a team lead teacher, etc., I see a lot of those pieces. And that's what makes me so excited to be here today, because the 1 minute miracle method is really actually going to apply to you. It's not something that, oh, well, if only you had. This is for you, I assure you. So you are in good hands, as they say. I'm on the same team. I'm not coming at it like I'm speaking to a group of insurance adjusters or plumbers, all amazing careers, but not quite the same complexity as the day-to-day job of a principal. So here are some places that I've appeared over the last few years. I spoke at the AA, Pennsylvania State Convention. I've appeared on NPR. I've spoken at Unitarian churches in the area. I was able to speak at the Massachusetts Teachers Association some years ago, Penn State Harrisburg, a number of Rotary clubs. So again, this is not my first rodeo. It's kind of funny because we have really high expectations for people on their second rodeo, don't we? So I've been around for a little while. And with that, there's been a lot of things that have happened in my life that have given me inspiration for what I'm able to share with you today. And to that end, I want us to kind of go back a little like the Golden Girls, when Sophia says, scene, Sicily, 1908. But instead of Sicily, let's go to August of 2012 in central Pennsylvania. So in August of 2012, I had just returned from a 1-week family vacation with our toddler, my toddler, who was a little over 2. And we had been visiting family. My husband had stayed behind. He said that he needed to get a lot of work done and he wasn't able to travel with us. So we went off on our own. And the way that the traffic back from Massachusetts, I'm originally from Western Mass, so shout out to New England. Originally, with the traffic coming back, I can imagine from Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, and vice versa, it took a little time. So by the time we got home on that Monday, it was actually, we met my husband in the parking lot of our couples counselor because we had been seeing a counselor for a number of months. There were issues that we were trying to get a handle on. And we met there because it was our appointment time. And it was sitting there in the counselor's office that he told me that the day before, he had had a conversation with a very good friend about the amount that he and the friend were drinking and that they thought maybe it was too much. And they kind of discussed what they might do to cut back. And by the afternoon, he was so panicked about that conversation that he proceeded to drink and drink. And he drank until he was blacked out, at which time he took a taxi to the local gentleman's club and spent $2,000 from our shared checking account, and then took a taxi home. And he didn't remember any of it. The bank receipts did. And he told me this with our daughter on the floor, trying to eat and not eat crayons. And he was bereft. He was so upset. He was ashamed. He felt guilty. And it wasn't a surprise. This had been behavior that had been kind of expected for some time, but this was an especially big one. And we left that appointment. Thank goodness that counselor also had a drug and alcohol background. We left that appointment with a handful of inpatient rehab facilities that were in Pennsylvania that we were going to look at. He was going to pick one. And on our drive home, separately in our separate vehicles, I allowed myself to feel hope for the first time in a long time. I mean, yes, we'd been together for 6 years and this had been a situation the entire time and it was getting worse, but he was going to get help. We were finally going to get this picket fence and this happy marriage. It was amazing. I was so excited. So when he came home on Tuesday from work and he stood in the living room, he told me, no, he wasn't going to rehab because it wasn't that big of a deal, because it wasn't going to happen again, because he couldn't miss work, and because he was going to work overtime and fill in that $2,000 deficit in our checking account. And that was the end of that. And I stood there, and for the first time in a long time, maybe in the entirety of our marriage, I did something different, and it changed everything. Now, what I did in that span of panic and absolute disbelief, denial, sadness, anger, was actually the beginning of the 1-minute miracle method. It was the beginning of a 5-step plan that anybody can use in virtually any situation to make decisions that make them proud, that can move their life forward in a positive way. And the reason that I start with that story isn't to gain sympathy, because lots of us are in lots of different situations. I know that I'm speaking to you and you are an elementary school principal, but you're also a human and you're also in relationships and you're also dealing with a lot right now. So I'm here to tell you that the 1 minute miracle method worked in my living room. It can certainly work with the big and small stuff you handle on a day-to-day basis. Whew, okay, that's a pretty big, well, I don't have any problems that are that big, say some of you, which congratulations, that's good. The 1 minute miracle will still work. And for those of you that are wrestling with some pretty big topics right now, the 1 minute miracle will work. So let's go through a couple of those steps. Step 1 is name your first thought. Name your first thought. So in any given decision, in any given situation, we know what it is we're going to do automatically. We've been around for a little while, right? We know what our instincts are. We just do. So let me give you a couple of examples. Please enjoy my delightful graphics, by the way. So we have professionally, let's say you walk into your cafeteria and it's about halfway through the older kids' lunch, and you walk in and all of a sudden you wonder if you're at a Def Leppard concert because whoa volume. Your first thought might be to make some noise yourself and get some order back. I mean, hey, no, this is not how we run a school. Come on, everybody. Your first thought might be yell, make sure that you are known. That's a great professional example, but again, we're people talking right now. So to the right, maybe you're standing in front of your fridge at 10:30 at night, nobody else is around, and your first thought standing in front of that fridge is ice cream. Whole pint, please. Chubby hubby sounds delicious, yay. 128 grams of fat, please, and thank you. That's your first thought. Now, I want to make sure that you understand that the first thought is not a bad thought. It's just the one we're used to doing. It's the one that we're conditioned to do because it's the one we've practiced. And for some of us who grew up maybe in difficult situations, in some houses where things weren't great, your first thought kept you alive. It helped you to stay where you were in terms of sanity. It helped you as a coping mechanism. But some first thoughts become less helpful over time. So you also see that question mark on there. What I want you to do is I want you to think about what is a situation that's happening for you personally or professionally, and something that's been happening in the last day. Might be little, might be I ran out of pasta. It might be really big. And I want you to think, what would my first thought be in that situation? What am I automatically going to do? And while you're thinking of that, I want you to put that in the chat because I want Danielle to kick some of those answers out to me that some people said. So I want you to put, what would your first thought be in a situation that you're handling right now? You don't need to write what the situation is. You might just write yell. And yes, that's a definite first thought. You might write get really quiet because in the situation you're thinking about, that's your first thought. I want to tell you in the situation with Mike, that was my husband, my first thought when he told me, no, I'm not going to get help, my first thought was, oh, tell him about why that was important. Talk to him. And that might mean manipulate him or cajole. That might mean tell him, if you loved me and you loved our daughter, you would go get help. It would be convincing. It would be using lots of words to help him really understand why that decision wasn't going to work for me. Not for mine, for him. It wasn't going to work for me. My first thought was convince him otherwise. So what are some of the things that are coming up in the chat? I would love to see what are some of those first thoughts that are happening.
We're seeing walk away, get upset, go silent, pause, freeze, put it off, avoidance, motion, get mad, self-talk, and angry.
Yes. I mean, special shout out to the put it off avoidance people. I feel you. But our first thought isn't bad. If you listen to that list, there's no value on that. Some of those are great first thoughts. Some of those are first thoughts that you're going to regret later because you're like, oh man, why did I do that? Right? So if you have any questions about step 1, anything that you're thinking about, pop it in the chat. We're going to do step 2. And then we'll take some questions about step 1 and step 2 because they go very well together. So we're going to do some questions about step 1 right after step 2 because you might get some of your first thought answers while we're talking about second thought. So let's do step 2 is find your second thought. Step 1 takes 1 or 2 seconds to do because we know automatically in any given situation. If I throw a ball at your face, your first thought is knock it away or catch it. It's not, ask me why you threw a ball at my face. That's not the first thought. You have an instinct, you have an automatic. And I love the ones that you listed. Yes, that is definitely expected from a group of elementary school principals who are used to some leadership. They get quiet or they get loud. Absolutely. Step 2 is find your second thought. Now I say that because as professionals, we know things that we want to change. We're high achievers, generally speaking. So you already know personally and in your own career, things that you want to improve on. And for the most part, you've done some work on almost all of them. Now, I don't mean you fixed them. I mean, you've thought about them. You've asked friends, you've asked colleagues, you've read blogs, you've taken courses, you've watched videos, you've read books, and you've gathered things kind of in your head that you would be willing to do. And then you put those ideas in a little mental recipe box. Now, that doesn't mean that you really use the box, but you've already kind of gone through and gotten rid of ideas that wouldn't be possibilities, recipes you would never actually make. Here's an example. If you want to get better sleep at night, you're going to read blogs, you're going to, Google better sleep. You're going to ask friends, hey, what do you do? Or do you use something? Or how do you make that work? If somebody was to talk with me about getting better sleep, and that's something I want to do, and I come up with go to bed at 10 p.m., that's not going into my recipe box, everybody. I am a night owl. 10 o'clock is like other people's 5 o'clock. The pandemic and all the schedules being thrown off mean I go to bed ridiculously late because I get so much done from 9 o'clock on. If somebody suggests that to get a better night of sleep, I should go to bed at 10 p.m., that's not going in the recipe box. No, thank you. Now, if you have make it as dark as a tomb, then yes, I would add that in because I think that sleeping with as much covered and no lights, I think that's helpful. Helps with the brain, serotonin, etc. I want you to think in the situation you were just thinking about, what could a second thought be? Now, let me give you some examples. In the loud cafeteria situation, your first thought is, whoa, if they're loud, I'm going to have to be louder to get them back. Your second thought, what could I do instead? You dig through the recipe box. It only takes about 3 to 5 seconds for most of us to find what another option could be. Notice I didn't say you got to move on anything. Just think of it. What would a second thought be? In that case, you see that professional standing there. They're just going to take it in for a couple seconds, and maybe they're going to go check in with whichever teachers are on duty and kind of find out, was this like, did they earn this? They got to be loud for 3 minutes because they were really good at being quiet. Are things out of control? Just kind of touch base with someone else. So my second thought might be take it in and then touch base with who's in charge. With the refrigerator experience, my first thought, ice cream. My second thought, digging through that recipe box, Sarah, maybe you just want something like cold and sweet. So maybe you can have some yogurt, throw in some fruit, throw in some granola for texture so it's a little like a Chubby Hubby, it's not just smooth. Back to second thought, I could eat yogurt, sure. In the big deal situation with my husband back in 2012, my second thought was to not say anything yet. Now, trust me, that had not been in my recipe box half a year earlier, but I had started attending Al-Anon, which is for the family and friends of people with a drinking problem. You normally might have heard it as for family and friends of alcoholics. Nobody needs to say they're an alcoholic. You don't need to name them an alcoholic. Basically, to go to Al-Anon, if you have a problem with somebody else's drinking or substance use, then you qualify because it's a problem for you, even if it's not for them. And I went there because of my husband and things getting progressively worse. And what I realized while I was there, people were laughing during meetings and sharing what they were trying, different ideas they were doing in their own life to make their own life better, regardless of whether the person was still drinking or not. And one of the things I heard over and over again was, you don't need to react, you can respond. You don't need to react, you can respond. And sometimes it's a smart idea to reach out to somebody else, a safe friend, maybe somebody also in Al-Anon, but a safe friend, and just kind of run, this is what I wanted to say to him, and kind of figure it out together. What's the way I can say it that's respectful to him and me, still gets the point across, avoids all the triggers and the, let's get into a fight. So for me, don't answer yet was really a new idea, but it was in my recipe box. I was willing to give it a try. And I considered that as my second thought. When this happened in 2012, there was no 1 minute miracle. This came about while this situation was unfolding. And that's part of the reason I call it the 1 minute miracle and not just the 1 minute method, because this was miraculous. This was a completely different approach, as big as that situation was. So I want you to drop in the chat any questions you have about the first thought or second thought. And I also do want you to drop in, what would you consider your second thought in the situation that you were considering before? Go into that recipe box. What's something you would be comfortable doing anyways, but you don't normally give yourself a chance because, hey, first thought is really fast normally. So drop some of those in the chat. And Danielle, whenever you get a good handle on them, go ahead. I would love to hear some of them.
Just waiting for some to come in.
You got it. Yeah, second thought means it usually takes about 3 to 5 seconds. So while you're thinking and typing those in, I want to bring up a question that actually I've taught this to all ages. And some of the best questions I've ever gotten are from, you would not be surprised, elementary school aged kids who are great at kind of finding the holes in things that grown-ups think are airtight. And the 5th grader said, so Ms. Palmer, what you're saying is that I have to pick something every time? Like, what is it? Can I wait? Like, I can't make choices right away every time. And I said, that is so brilliant. Thank you for bringing that up. No, your second thought can be, wait, I need more time. So that's definitely something to include in your recipe box. Sometimes is, I'm going to need another couple days, or I'm going to need an hour, or I'm going to need a day. If somebody shoots you a particularly prickly email, your first thought might be, oh, let them know. Your second thought might be, let me give it an hour. Let me cool off, kind of rethink how I want to say things. Second thought can be, wait. Okay, what do you have for me, Danielle?
We have take a deep breath, listen longer before reacting, self-talk, who can I ask for help, start working the problem, get more information and consult other stakeholders, listen but don't push, explain the consequences, what your choices will be, and I'm seeing a lot of ask for help.
Yes. Yeah, that's not our first thought most of the time, is it? I mean, the positions we got into a lot of times are because we can make quick decisions, right? But that also can become a downfall because we're not checking in. So I love that so many of you have been considering, you know what? Let me check in with somebody else, somebody that would be a useful person to ask. Yes. Oh my gosh, this is great. This is great. So first thought takes 1 to 2 seconds. Second thought takes 3 to 5 seconds. So we're looking at 5 to 7 seconds right now. And we're at step 3. It's almost simple. Like, it's almost, come on, Sarah, that's not even a step. But step 3 is pick one. Notice I didn't have you pick one before. You just needed to figure out what they were so you could balance them in your head. Step 3 is pick one. Okay, Sarah, but what you're saying is, if I yell at the cafeteria of students, that was okay, because that's not okay. Or I ate the whole pint of ice cream, completely blew my diet. And by the way, I hate the word diet, but that's how some people refer to it. Bleh. Now here's the deal. Step 3 says pick one. It doesn't say judge yourself for it. But the difference is, if you pick your first thought instead of it just happening, then boom, you have power. You are doing this intentionally. It's not an accident. You're not looking up and halfway through a pint of ice cream and going, oh my gosh, how did that happen? Oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed. This is terrible. You picked the ice cream on purpose. And because of that, you don't have to feel guilty. You don't have to feel shame. You don't have to feel embarrassed. I chose this. I recognize what's going on. I have 2 choices and I want the ice cream. Remember, there is no value on your first thought or second thought. The first thought's not always bad and the second thought's not always good. Take away this is a good or bad. Just here's my choices. My go-to choice, my let me try it out, I never really give it a chance choice. And pick one of them. And like I said, this takes between 7 to 10 seconds to do. The first 3 steps take 7 to 10 seconds. This is huge. In the situation when I was standing in the living room, I chose to not say anything yet. And that was probably the first time that I had really pulled that recipe card out and said, this is my second thought. This is what I'm going with. And it changed everything. It meant that I was able to start removing myself from the decisions of somebody else and make my own decisions instead of relying entirely on their decisions for happiness or security. And we ended up splitting up. We ended up divorcing. We co-parent our kid, like, I love this phrase, like a house on fire. And we can do that with a level of respect that I had no access to before, because I have the 1 minute miracle. I have those first 3 steps to rely on every time he and I communicate. It doesn't have to be, well, it came out of my mouth. No, I picked for that to come out of my mouth. So I'm aware of what that means. It's really incredibly empowering. And I want to bring up a point. A lot of people say, oh, this is good for anybody. Anybody can do this method that I'm teaching. Not Sarah. Pretend I'm not Sarah. This other person comes in. Oh, of course, anybody can do this method. Well, yeah, the way that you're describing the method, anybody can do it if they have a whole week to go on a retreat somewhere with you. Or everybody can do this method as much as they have paid staff to take care of, cooking and cleaning and childcare and transportation, to make me free to spend all this other time on this new method, which is probably amazing, but probably not really available to most of us. The 1 minute miracle method is universally applicable. It is available to kids that can hold 2 ideas in their head and pick one, all the way up through the most wisdom-filled people among us that are on the other end of their life journey, that they can say, if you can hold 2 ideas in your head at the same time, you can do the 1 minute miracle method. Even folks who have intellectual disabilities, they may need more than 7 to 10 seconds, but they can do it too. And to have a strategy in front of you that really is available all the time for free, you know it now, by the way. You're never going to not know this. You may not use it, but you'll always know it. And to just be able to carry that around with you is life-changing. In the chat, I want you to drop which of those 2 decisions, that first thought and that second thought, which one would you go with in that situation? Just put a number, 1 or 2. And remember, 1 is not bad and 2 is not good. So I'm expecting that, yep, I'm going to see a group of each, probably more 2s, because asking for help is probably a good idea sometimes. But I love that I'm also going to see some 1s. Now these 3 steps, yes, see, loving the numbers. These 3 steps are the action steps. And they take about 7 to 10 seconds. We're going to pause. And Danielle, if you've seen any questions come up for step 1, 2, or 3, anything that hasn't been answered, can you kick those out to me? Because I want to make sure that people are feeling really confident with our action steps before we move on.
I do not see any questions just yet.
Okay, so that means one of 2 things. Either all of you have wandered away from the screen, or I'm doing a pretty good job of explaining. Okay, third option, or you're not quite in the mood to drop a question in the chat because we live on Zoom and that can be exhausting. In any case, you have my handles in the bottom corner of your screen. So if you have questions beyond this presentation, or if something comes up in the future, definitely hit me at my LinkedIn. I would love to connect on LinkedIn, or my Instagram, or my Facebook at Sarah Palmer Speaks. So if you have a question, you'd rather not put it out for everybody in the world to see, you can hit me up on one of those and I would write back to you. So the first 3 steps are those action steps. And now we're going to talk about, well, Sarah, 1 minute miracle. You didn't say like the 10-second reckoning or something. It doesn't even round up to a minute. How are you saying 1 minute miracle? That's because the other 2 steps are our maintenance steps. They make it possible for us to do steps 1, 2, and 3 and feel really comfortable with them. So, okay, who's ready for step 4? Hit the halt TM. Hit the halt TM. So these are the maintenance steps. You're going to do these kind of throughout a day, and all together it'll add up to about a minute. And that's the 1 minute miracle method. So hit the halt. What I found amazing about the first 3 steps and how that helped me to navigate the end of my relationship with my husband and even start setting boundaries with other people in my life by doing the 1 minute miracle method, I found that I was able to surround myself with healthier people. And the people that weren't healthy, I was able to kind of move away from them in a loving way and recognize that, you know, it's got to be me first. I've got to take care of me first. And what I noticed when I moved away from them within about a year, I recognized I was making some really terrible decisions that I used to be able to blame on, well, I'm doing this because he did, or I'm doing this because she said. And in fact, it wasn't them. It was never them. It was always me. It ended up that I had to find my own 12-step fellowship, my own 12-step recovery for my own addiction that I wouldn't have even recognized before I had gone to Al-Anon and been able to disentangle myself from toxic problems with other people. I ended up in my own 12-step fellowship, having gone in to figure out how to help somebody else with theirs. And my first sponsor would say to me, Sarah, I want you to tell me today, how is your HALT? And I would say, what are you talking about? And she said, HALT. It's an acronym, and it stands for hungry, angry, lonely, tired. How's your HALT? Are you hungry? Are you angry? Are you lonely? Or are you tired? Because if you are any of those things, God forbid, most of those things at any given time, you are going to have just a real hard time with life. You are not going to have the strong foundation you need to make good decisions. So our first 3 steps in the 1 minute miracle method are action steps. But how are you going to have that kind of foundation to make a second thought happen? If you're hungry, or you're angry, or you're lonely, or you're tired, if you're any of those things, you're just more likely to go with your first thought because it's easier. Just boom, snap. And I loved this. This is such a great foundation for me to check in a couple times a day. And I mean, I don't need to tell you, most of you as elementary school principals, hungry? I mean, come on. If you got 2 bites of your reheated breakfast burrito for lunch, you're having a good day. So I'm recognizing that there are going to be times during the day, both at home and at work, that you're going to go, okay, am I hungry? Am I angry? Am I lonely? Am I tired? And we don't have too much time to go into solutions for those here. I do offer other trainings, love to do professional development for staffs, I'll be honest, because we can get into what are actual ways we can handle those. But what I realized was we were missing 2 letters. So I added a little t and a little m. So it looks like trademark, but it's not. So the little t stands for thirsty. I mean, how many situations have I been in my life that would have gone more amenably if I would have been hydrated? Personally, how many dates could I have possibly ended far earlier in the evening if I just would have had enough water going in to be like, I don't need to stick around for this? And the M is meditation and medication. A lot of people say, well, M, you could say mindset, right, Sarah? M for mindset. And I said, yes, except, now I'm going to be real with all you here. Mindset has been taken over as a word that white women use to sell $160 yoga pants and fancy juice. So yes, M is mindset, but I really break it down to what it really is, which is meditation, chances for your brain to reset during the day, and medication, things that we need to make sure that our brain chemicals are doing what they're supposed to be doing when they're supposed to be doing them. I am the earthiest, crunchiest person you could meet in the entire world. I love sunshine. I love smiling. I love good diet. I love all sorts of stuff. But I'll tell you what, all of that did not help control my anxiety and depression like a medication did. Because unfortunately, all of the vitamin D in the world will not make my body stop making certain chemicals it's supposed to make and send other chemicals just to other places. We don't need you here, but here you are. So for some of us, medication is a key part of being able to make solid decisions. And if it's not for you, that is perfectly okay. But I want to make sure that we bring up meditation and medication, that both of them have to do with kind of a baseline. I can't control hungry, angry, lonely, tired, or thirsty if I don't have my brain at a place that can look at things and go, oh yeah, okay, this is the way I can handle that. As opposed to going, I can't possibly handle that. So halt TM. Step 4 asks you to hit the halt TM. So a couple times during the day, check in. Which of these might I need to get a little fix on? In fact, right now, I want you to drop in the chat. Drop 1 or 2, and I know for some of you it is way more than 2, but let's just pick 1 or 2 that you could say, yep, if I check in right now, that's one that I'm a little low on. I'm struggling a little with that. When we have a couple of those, Danielle, I would love to hear some of the ones that pop up. So it's afternoon on a Wednesday. I'm interested to see which ones are we recognizing are being tough right now.
Tired, thirsty and tired, hungry and thirsty, thirsty and lonely, tired and angry. So a lot of tireds and a lot of thirsties.
Yes, that water every time. See, thank you for everybody who's kicking something in, because for everybody who is making a comment, there's probably 1 or 2 of you out there going, I'm just too tired to type this in. But yeah, I'm tired. Or, oh yeah, you know what? I'm going to go get something to drink. Feel free to wander away if you need to, come back, or pause if you're watching this on the replay. So when we're taking care of ourselves, we actually have the capacity to make step 3 a really good step. We can pick one from a place of abundance and not a place of lack. And lastly, we're going to talk, actually, any questions on step 4? Like I said, in my longer trainings, we get a chance to get into halt TM, and we talk about what are ways that we can actually address those on the move. I mean, you're a principal, you don't have an hour in the middle of the day to go take a long walk in nature. So how are you going to be able to reconnect? How are you going to make sure that you're getting the things that you need? Like I said, staff trainings, I love working with educational staffs because I've been there and I know what bad professional development looks like. And I know what the good stuff looks like because I used to do professional development as a teacher. So I love being able to meet, even virtually. I mean, come on, there's nothing better than training with casual clothes on the bottom half. We'll say pajama pants for everybody, and still get that information out to your staffs. So what are some questions about halt TM that might be popping up?
Nothing just yet.
Okay. And feel free to interrupt me, Danielle, if somebody asks one, because like I said, I want to make sure that you leave this training with more than just, well, that was nice. So what is halt TM? Can you give me an example of it? You know, how would you not be lonely? Feel free to ask that. We can jump into those in a small amount. We have time because I'm building in time for you. Now, step 5, practice every day. Now here, this is the secret sauce, because the first 4 steps are probably pieces of things you've heard before. Maybe not in this order and maybe not this easy to absorb, but you've probably heard them. I'm thinking the book, Getting Things Done, amazing book. I mean, Google Getting Things Done when you have some time, if you have, a couple hours to fall down a rabbit hole of organization. It's a great book. Lots of people say, oh my gosh, this changed my life. I was able to completely figure out how I wanted to schedule my home life and my work life and my personal time outside of relationships with other people. It was great. It's a great book. However, when I finished reading the book, about 3 days after, I recognized I was pretty much back to doing what I'd been doing before. And then I felt stupid. Why did I waste my time on this? Some people go away for a weekend retreat or a professional development weekend that you get sent to, and you get these great ideas in the workshops and you are inspired. This is some great stuff you're going to bring back and figure out how you can implement it in your personal life, or more often than not, in your school. And then by the following Tuesday or Wednesday, you go, how am I going to fit that in? I can barely do what I'm doing now. Our lives are 117% scheduled. I don't have time for something new. I mean, if I could, I would, right, Sarah? And I hear you. I've been there. That's why step 5 is the secret sauce. Because before you leave, before you stand up from the screen, you are going to know how to make the 1-minute miracle stick in 60 seconds or less a day, so that you do this forever without trying. I'm in, Sarah. Okay, I got you. So take a look here. We have some devices on the screen. We kind of go from most to least techno savvy. We have some tablets. Everybody has a tablet or a phone, and I include flip phones in there. You know, they are phones too. But we are surrounded by devices, and there is a good likelihood that there is one right there off screen, right? Right? Or maybe you're watching on it now. How can we use this to make it easy for us? Well, every single one of those devices, including laptops, have a calendar function. What we're going to do is schedule in that calendar function. And if you decide, nope, I am tired. See, I saw you on the Halt TM. I can't do this. Take a note or go back and watch the recording whenever they send those out. Come back to this part if you have a little more energy, but if not, you can do it now. I'll go just slow enough to make it work. So on your device, I want you to open up the calendar, and I want you to set an event for tomorrow morning. It could be an event or a task, whichever one works better for you. I'm an event girl myself. I want you to set it for some time in the morning that you know you're off doing life, but you're not super busy. This arrival time with the kids, not the time to set your time. So 10 o'clock, maybe 10:30, sometime when you know you're doing different things each day. Don't pick a time if you are one of the lucky ones who schedules in, 20 minutes of solid, dope, this is me time, unless the building's on fire, I don't want to hear about it. If you do have those, A, bless you, and B, don't schedule this during that time. Pick a time when you're out doing the stuff. And I want you to set it for a half an hour. You will only need a minute, but set it so it shows up as a half an hour. And for the event title, you can put 5th step, 1mm. 5th step, 1 minute miracle. And if you want, you can put Sarah says you can do it, or I can do it, or do this, let's do this, okay? And on all of the calendars, sometimes even on the flip phone, there is a repeat option. And if there is a repeat this event option, I want you to pick it and choose custom. Okay, Sarah, we are getting real techie here for a Wednesday afternoon. Remember, you can watch the recording and come back. I'm making sure I got you, okay? Where it says custom, you're going to pick every 3 days. And then usually it says, do you want to end on a certain date, after a certain number of events, or never? Pick never. And then, okay, and then save it. And now every 3 days for the rest of your life, you are going to get a reminder at that time in the morning. And you're like, okay, what is that reminder for though? What are we doing? Stick with me. We're going to do the same thing for 2 days from now. So for Friday, open up and pick an afternoon time. Dismissal, not the time. The middle of your professional development training, probably not the good time. Or maybe it is. So pick a time in the afternoon that you're going to be doing stuff. You could even have it be if you're driving, but I'd really prefer you not, be on devices when you're driving. Safety. And then same thing, 5th step, 1mm, you got this, thumbs up emoji, repeat, custom, every 3 days. When does it end? Never. And then lastly, go to Saturday and set up an evening time. Pick a time when you're normally awake. I know that there are some night owls in here, but most of you are not exactly awake at 12 or 12:30 in the morning. So don't set it for them. And if you have kids, set it for bedtime if you're feeling particularly brave, but you don't have to. So set it for sometime in the evening when you're normally doing stuff. 5th step, 1mm, go you, repeat, custom, 3 days, never ends. Save. What you have now done is set up a schedule that will go on forever, that every 6 out of 7 days at a different time, so it's random, you're going to have your event pop up. What do you do during that event, Sarah? You have my calendar filled with stuff. What are we doing here? Okay, ready? You're going to practice the first 3 steps of the 1 minute miracle, but in your head. Let me give you an example. Your afternoon alarm goes off. It is 3:30 and you are doing a data meeting with the grade heads for the upper level kids. And you're sitting on Zoom because Zoom, and your alarm goes off, you shut it off, yep, okay, I see it. And then I want you to do the first 3 steps. Your 3rd grade teacher, your lead teacher, is about to report out on an assessment they did recently. Your first thought is, in your head, please. Oh my God, did an emo teenager do her makeup? That is terrible. Why? Why? No, just be your profile picture or your name. Seriously, I can't. That's your first thought. Just, whoa, that is a terrible makeup job. Second thought, recipe box. Ah, Sarah, there you are with the heteropatriarchal thing about if your face doesn't look perfect, if it's not the correct shade for your age and season and region of the United States, that you shouldn't be taken seriously. Okay, come on, Sarah. How about you listen to the results of the assessment and listen to her ideas and not necessarily how she looks? Step 3, pick one. And remember, there's not a good and a bad. I might be feeling salty today, so maybe I'm going with the first thought. I'm just gonna, in my own head, make fun of her makeup. Or, okay, fair enough, that's not great. I know that's how I grew up, that's what I've been told, I don't like that. Let me just listen. If I need to, I won't look directly at her while she's reporting, but I'm gonna listen to her ideas because I know the 3rd grade team's been working really hard. You do that every day in your own head in lots of different situations, and then when a big decision comes up, when a big situation comes up, when you are talking to your partner and you are having the fight that you always have, the one that never gets resolved, and they say that one thing, that if you say that other thing, you get like 20 more minutes of fight. It's like a restart. It's great. If you can run through the 1-minute miracle method with all those days and weeks of practice you've had, you can actually do it in a really high stress situation and be comfortable with your result. The 1-minute miracle method isn't based on magic. It's just based on logic. Our brains are accustomed to doing things a certain way. It's like the superhighway. The first choice is our superhighway. The second choice is like a little dirt road next to the superhighway. I'm not telling you can never get on the superhighway again, but I'm saying let's make this process visible. So before I just pull on the on-ramp to the superhighway, I can decide, do I want to go there or do I want to go on the dirt road? Because the more that I drive on the dirt road, that road's going to get paved because neural connections work with repetition. The second thought will never be your first thought. Your first thought is always going to be your superhighway. But having a choice over it, oh my gosh, it's life-changing. Let me just share one quick testimonial, and then I want to start getting some questions from you. So this was one, I just used the 1-minute miracle method through an anxiety attack. So simple, but it's all about the pause. We always hear about it, but until no one showed us how. Now, Suzanne was somebody that had been in a group I had trained. Suzanne had been trained on a Tuesday afternoon, and by Wednesday at 7 a.m., that was sitting in my inbox. She had already found a way to apply it immediately because it wasn't a workbook and it wasn't a long-term thing. It was immediately something that she could do, and it worked. So I have a few other testimonials, but I want to hear from you. So what are some questions that you have? What are some situations that you can see this working in your personal or professional life? So I would love to hear some. Drop them in the chat and Danielle will share. If you have any questions about any of the steps on the 1-minute miracle, I'm also absolutely ready to hear those too. So I want you to think, even if you don't put it in the chat, I want you to think, what is a situation in your personal life where you can see the 1-minute miracle being useful? And what's one situation in your professional life where you can see this being useful? It's been a fantastic opportunity to work with all of you today. And I know tired is a big one today, right? I got you. So I absolutely love working with different corporate environments, but I do have a special spot in my heart for elementary schools because that's where I was for a very long time. I'm going to hand it back to Dr. Gracie, but please take a look. My contact information is right along the bottom. You can email me, sarah@sarahpalmerspeaks.com. My website is in progress, but there's also an ability to contact me there. You can text me at the number that's there. I answer back everybody. I have a team, but I make sure and respond back myself. And all of my social media contacts are at the bottom at Sarah Palmer Speaks. I want to make sure that you feel personally supported, and I want you to help out your staff, because imagine what would happen if everybody on your teachers all of the staff, cafeteria, administrative, custodial, had the ability to take a pause before they kept moving, and how much that would affect them, and then the students. It's life-changing, it really, really is. So Dr. Gracie, I wanted to thank you again for having me. This was an absolute pleasure. I would love to come back and work with the NAESP any way you would like me to. I'm in.
Thank you, Sarah. I wanted to read one of the, Crystal had written in the chat box. She was thinking professionally that as a principal, you deal with so many personalities every day at school. And she said, and that's just the adults. When you look at kind of our sphere of influence as principals, and you've got students, you've got your adult staff, you have parents. So just thinking about the 1 Minute Miracle and thinking about really the choices and the options we have to, like you said, stop and pause and really think about how you're going to deal with that situation. I think it's just so very helpful. Sometimes we're just so busy, we don't give ourselves that space and grace to just pause and think. So I really appreciate you reminding us of that today, and the possibilities that we have.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you to everybody who commented and everybody who didn't comment, but you're here because listeners are active and sometimes just need to be present. And I'm hoping you're taking good care of yourselves in this time, just this time. So yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. And I am looking forward to hearing from some of you who are like, you know what, this was great for me. And wow, this could be really useful.
Thank you, Sarah. We appreciate it.
Thank you.